suppressing rebels. They knew he was good at keeping the peace. They knew he was willing to do whatever it took, that he was willing to be brutal and ruthless. They didn't have to personally like him. They just had to know that he would do the job.
Next up, though, is the Roman Senate. As Herod climbs the steps of the Senate House, he's flanked by the two most powerful men in the empire. Antony and Octavian have assured him that the senators will go along with their wishes. But Herod is taking nothing for granted. He knows it was in this Senate House that Caesar was murdered 4 years earlier. The tall bronze doors close behind him as he enters the austere hall. Almost 1,000 senators sit on benches, lining two sides of the vast room. It's a daunting audience. But Herod has one of the best orators in the empire by his side. Not for nothing did Shakespeare give Mark Antony the best speech in his play. And Antony is on top form today, singing Herod's praises. His revenue raising, his battle skills, his diplomacy. This brave leader and close friend of the Roman people has been ejected from his land by the barbaric Parthians, and the outrage cannot be allowed to stand. If Rome is to take back this territory, it can only be with Herod in charge. But there's more. Antony doesn't just want Herod instated as a governor. This man deserves more than that. The throne of Judea is there for the taking. Herod must be king of the Jews. The response to Antony's words is overwhelming. Now it's time to vote. The senators move across to one side of the hall. Nobody remains on the other side. It's unanimous. In name at least, Herod is king of Judea.
The great ambition that Herod had clearly cherished, I would think from a very early age, was to be named as king. Actually, to reign as the sovereign over Judea. That was an extraordinary ambition for him. He did not belong to the royal household, nothing like a member of the family of David, and also he did not belong to any of the high priestly families. Herod, at a moment of historic weakness, achieved the royal title that his father had never inherited. But of course, at that moment in the year 40, that was a theoretical title. He was king of Judea. In that sense, one could also refer to him as king of the Jews. But in order to make that a reality on the ground, it would take the better part of 3 years of extraordinarily cruel and bloody fighting.
Right now, Roman custom demands an act of sacrifice. Herod must accompany his allies to the temple of Jupiter, where swine will be butchered to mark the momentous news. It's an uncomfortable proposition. Back home, this would be seen as an act of sacrilege. But when in Rome...
At first that might seem shocking. Herod, the Jewish aristocrat, making a sacrifice with non-Jews in a non-Jewish temple. What other option does he have? He can't afford to offend Antony or Octavian, so he's going to do whatever they want. You know, hopefully my people don't find out about this. Hopefully they don't hear about this, but I don't have the option right now because I need Roman money, I need Roman soldiers, I need Roman help.
To visit the temple characterizes the tightrope Herod will have to walk if he is to be a successful ruler of Judea. He's been given the job by the Romans, and in exchange, they will expect all the revenue and ease of trade that's made it an important part of their empire. But even if Herod can win the war to see...
Hello out there on the internet. I am Matthew Galt, and you know what this is. This is cyber. In America, the trains, they never seem to run on time. On February 3rd, a train crashed in East Palestine, Ohio, releasing toxic chemicals into the air, and almost a month later, another train, owned by the same company, also derailed, also in Ohio. That's not all. Trains in Charlotte are running slower than they should. New York City can't seem to fit its trains into its new station. And the list, it goes on and on. You want to hear about paperwork in Boston slowing down trains? We're going to get to that too. What the hell is going on with mass transit in America? Well, if you're a longtime cyber listener, you might already know some of the answers to this question, and that is in thanks to returning champion, Motherboard senior writer Aaron Gordon. That's right, it's another episode of Matthew and Aaron Do America. This week, we are tackling the train system in the U.S. and mass transit, and how our inability to keep things moving reflects a larger systemic problem with the whole damn system. I guess systemic problem with the whole damn system is kind of redundant, isn't it? It sounded good when I wrote it. Anyway, thank you, Joel. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, as always, to talk about trains, Galt.
Did you ever in your life think you were going to be talking about trains this much, and that people would be so attentive to it?
I wasn't even, into trains in the remotest as a child, or up through 2017 was when I started to get into it. So, I should think the short answer is no.
What changed?
I got fucked by the subway one too many times, and then I got laid off and had 8 weeks of severance, or 10 weeks or something, and was like, I'm gonna spend these 10 weeks figuring out what the fuck is wrong with the subway. And here I am.
And now here you are. All right, well, let's start off with your most recent piece. It is about the Ohio Attorney General basically agreeing with what I would assume is your assessment that the crash in East Palestine was preventable, right?
Yes, it sure was. And I mean, both in a philosophical sense, in that all accidents are preventable, and also in a much more specific sense that this particular accident was very much preventable.
In what way? I mean, I just want to go over some things that we've talked about at length in the show very, very briefly. How is this preventable? And what did the Attorney General say here?
Yeah, so let's talk about the Attorney General's lawsuit against Norfolk Southern, the rail company that whose train derailed in East Palestine. So this is a civil lawsuit for damages, and is a 58-count complaint laying out all these different ways in which Norfolk Southern is legally liable, essentially through negligence, for the derailment. And there are kind of two main points that the Ohio Attorney General makes. One is that Norfolk Southern, broadly speaking, has had an increasing rate of accidents and derailments over the last decade, specifically an 80% increase in accidents and derailments over the last 10 years when using ton miles traveled as the metric, rather than just accidents per year, which is the number that railroads and their associations like to use because it's a bad metric, but it makes them look better. But a lot has changed in railroading over the last 10 years. They run fewer but longer trains, and so it's better to use ton miles as a metric, or either ton miles or per million miles, or just some kind of prorated metric. And that's what the complaint uses. And then the other way in which it says the accident was foreseeable and preventable is that, as we now know, the National Transportation Safety Board has said that the cause of the derailment in East Palestine was an overheated wheel bearing on rail car's axle. We don't know why that wheel bearing overheated, or what kind of made Norfolk Southern not notice it before it derailed, but we do know that's the reason the train derailed. And the complaint says that this, exact or very, very similar issue has happened on other recent Norfolk Southern derailments, indicating a trend